Information is power.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the program. Let's get into this. This will be a little conspiratorial, but I think there's something to this. As you already know, on Thanksgiving, you had a terrorist, or what they're calling a terrorist attack, a shooting in the D.C. area. There were National Guardsmen that got hurt. One lost their life. This young lady right here, it's been all over the news. And I thought that I would get into this subject matter with this audience because I think I have one of the best audience in the business. I think you guys are astute. Your critical thinking skills are off the chart. And there is something very fishy about this whole situation. Lakanwal is his name. Rahmanullah Lakanwal. This guy is a Afghani nationalist. Remember, under the Biden administration, he worked as a contractor with the CIA. So whenever the CIA is involved in something, it makes my radars go up. Remember, bin Laden, when they were saying that he was a terrorist, remember bin Laden at one point in time had ties to the CIA. Okay. Can we believe what our government is telling us? Are they truthful? And under this administration, with Kash Patel as the so-called FBI director, laughable. Can you really believe what they tell you? It's a lot of fishy things that's going on. So let me break something down through doing a little research. But I ran across a channel called 5149. There's a guy by the name of James Lee. He did incredible research on this situation. And so as a result of that, I'm going to present this to you. And I want you to give me your honest opinion about what you think is going on here. Can we really believe what we know? With AI today, they can use AI to scrub you from the internet, to scrub people where you can't find them anymore. There was something going on. So on November the 20th, this guy right here, Lakanwal, on November the 20th, there was a spike. There was a deep spike in people looking into this guy. Let me just put this up here for you. This is what he's going to present to you in just a moment. I'm going to show you the video of James Lee. So right here, Rahul Lakanwal, Washington, D.C., there was a spike the past 7 days, November 20th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Interested over time, there were people searching for this name. Why would people be searching on Google Trends for this guy's name? He hadn't done any deed yet. Then on the day of, before he did the deed, November 26, 2025 at 12:48 a.m., there was a spike. That's what I meant to say. There was a spike for this guy's name. Why would there be a spike at 12:48 a.m. before he does the deed? And why were people looking for his name on Google Trends just around this particular week that he did the deed on November the 20th? And then mysteriously, Google scrubbed everything. Your search does not have enough data to show here. They completely scrub this guy from the internet. Now, I'm going to say it again. He's CIA. He became an American citizen, or he was allowed to come into the country because of the fact that he did dirty work for the United States of America. Let's just keep it real. Here is his connection to the CIA. Here's a badge with him there. So as a contractor, they allowed him to live in the country. People are saying, oh, this is Biden's fault. Biden should have never let these folks in. Yeah, the Biden administration might have dropped the ball on letting this guy in, or many others like him. But it was the Trump administration, okay? It was the Trump administration that allowed this guy to come in and then take the life of this young lady right here. It was the Trump administration. When he was up for renewal, they approved his renewal to be in the country. That was Donald Trump's administration. So although you had Biden, who allowed him to come in, and many others that were working for the United States, it was the Trump administration that sort of signed off on allowing him to stay. They renewed his credentials. So there's a lot of blame all these political parties can have in this situation. All of them take some blame. But this is what's really weird about this. Why is it that information on this guy has been scrubbed off the internet? Why were people searching for his name a few days before he did the deed, and then it was spiking up in the early morning hours, midnight hours before he did the deed later on that day? Let me play this right here for you. This is a little bit of a breakdown of the story and what happened. Just a quick summary, everybody, and check this out.
To remember the National Guard soldier who was killed in the nation's capital this week. We also know another soldier is still fighting for their life. As Christian Benavidez reports, the president is announcing an immigration crackdown in response to the shooting.
In her hometown of Webster Springs, West Virginia, residents gathered to say goodbye to 20-year-old Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom after being gunned down in Washington, D.C. this week.
Nothing but caring, loving, willing to help somebody, anything out of her way to help somebody get through it, anything that they needed.
Beckstrom's father, Gary, mourned his daughter on social media, writing, "My baby girl has passed to glory." Friday, officials announced that the suspect, 29-year-old Rahmanullah Lakanwal, an Afghan national living in Washington state, will be charged with first-degree murder. He worked with the U.S. during the Afghan war and was allowed in 2021 through a Biden-era program called Operation Allies Welcome. The suspect's asylum case was then approved earlier this year, according to a DHS official.
When you let the people come in by the thousands and thousands and thousands, they made a terrible mistake.
In response to the shooting, President Trump announced he would permanently pause migration from, quote, third world countries. He threatened to revoke U.S. citizenship from foreign-born Americans who undermine domestic tranquility and called for a review of all green card holders from 19 countries of concern, including Iran, Venezuela, and Afghanistan. The Department of Homeland Security says it will be reviewing all asylum cases approved under the Biden administration.
Now, look, Biden administration, they had their hands in this, but the Trump administration gave their blessing for this guy to be in this country. They gave the blessing. Okay, they signed off. So there's a lot of blame to go around, but this is the question that a lot of people are wondering. Is this simply a CAI op that went wrong? Was this some type of test, some type of black ops, something that was going on that went completely wrong? Because all of a sudden this guy has been scrubbed from all over social media or Google. All of a sudden there was a spike of his name prior to this happening on November the 20th. I'm going to remind you of this because through the video that I'm about to show you with James Lee and his channel 5149 channel. Okay. And then there was a even bigger spike the morning before he did the deed. Somebody knew something before it happened. Is this part of an op? People who believe in conspiracy theories would say, was this a part of people that are under brainwash? There's also the things that you can run with, but I want you to hear what James had to say right here about this situation. He has a really good research into this. Here we go.
Rahmanullah Lakanwal has been identified as the suspected shooter in the ambush attack that killed one National Guard member and wounded another just blocks away from the White House on Wednesday, says the Department of Homeland Security. According to Jeff Carroll, the executive assistant chief of the D.C. Metro Police Department, the suspect was subdued at the scene of the shooting and taken into custody by National Guard members and law enforcement officers. Interestingly, Carroll said the suspect appeared to be a, quote, lone gunman that raised the firearm and ambushed these members of the National Guard as they patrolled near a mass transit station in downtown D.C.
So there you have it, downtown D.C. This is interesting right here. He's going to bring this clip up in just a minute. Once again, I said this guy is he's a Afghan nationalist named Lakanwal, has been identified as a suspect shooter. As you already know, an ambush attack that wounded 2 National Guard troops. He just blocks away from the White House on Wednesday, Department of Homeland Security. You guys have heard this all over your news feed. Let's continue.
A horrific incident, in my opinion, whichever way you look at it, regardless of your politics. But there are some very interesting and peculiar things the mainstream media doesn't want us talking about.
Right.
Per my research, on November 20th, which is just 6 days prior to the attack, Google search trends showed a small but documented and noticeable aberration in searches for one Rahmanullah Lakanwal, originating from the D.C. metro.
This is what I was showing y'all earlier on, originating from the D.C. metro area. There was a small little spike of people searching this. Why would this be searched on November the 20th? I'm going to say it again, and this happens on November the 26th. The spike came about in at 5 p.m. Let me let James continue.
Area. I then zoomed in to look at more closely the search activity for just the day of the attack. And I was absolutely shocked, just floored by what I saw, because look at that. There is a massive spike in searches for Lakanwal in the wee hours of the morning of November 26th. Once again, that is the day of the attack. A spike. I
want y'all to look at this very closely. This is what he's talking about. There's a spike in activity that's got his name in there. This was a search that took place November 26, 2025. At 12:48 a.m., like I said, there was a spike in search that morning before he did the deed. Something is suspicious about this. Something doesn't add up right.
Might add that completely dwarfs even the number of searches after the news of the shooting broke later that afternoon. Here's a screen recording that I took just to make sure the evidence is preserved, which, by the way, has already been wiped by Google. Of course,
this is what I want to do.
Still remains.
I want to bring that part back because that's another part. Now, Google, as he said, they erased everything, but I want to bring it right back to this part right here where he talks about this right here.
Here's a screen.
There we go. So I'm going to slow this down and let you see this
recording that I took.
He took this recording at November 26, 2025 at 7:36 a.m. Here's the spike that you see to your left with the blue lines. Pay attention.
Just to make sure
there we go. Then at 11:28 a.m., November 26, 2025, there's these little spikes with his name in search. Did someone know that this was going to happen before it happened? And you know it would not be some regular person. This might be an inside situation. And the reason why I say this is because the United States does have a history of using people from the Middle East, or using people by putting pressure on them to go out and do deeds. This has been documented. He's going to talk about it in a few minutes, and I'm going to show you a clip of that documentation, or a news clip from someone that was used like this by the government. This is crazy. Let's go back to this slowly.
Evidence is
right here, November 26, 2025 at 5:20 p.m. Those are the spikes right there. Let's continue. Let's continue with
observed,
this.
which, by the way, has already been wiped by Google.
Already been wiped by Google. Let me show you right here a little bit closer up. Boom. So he's absolutely right. This whole thing is suspicious. You know, I don't like to sound too crazy here, but what do you think? Something does not make sense. Something does not add up right. But he went back to search this again, and all of a sudden Google took it down. That's what's going on today. This is very suspicious. Let's go back. Let's go back into this.
Of course, the question still remains, why would there have been people searching for this guy's name a week prior to the attack?
Right.
And then another massive spike in the early morning hours, the day of the attack.
Right.
That strikes me as very strange. Another very strange data.
It's not only strange, it's very suspicious, to say the least. I want y'all to make comments and be smart, be critical in your thinking, and give honest comments about what you think is going on here.
Tell the truth.
It's about telling the truth. Okay?
Tell the truth.
Once again, this is the spike he's talking about, and this guy followed the trend all the way through. He documented this before they took it down. Let's get back.
4 days prior, someone, probably multiple, most likely, in the state of Israel was searching for the name Sarah Beckstrom, the National Guard soldier who tragically lost her life.
Boom. Check this out. Let's enlarge that so you can see it even closer. So that's what he's talking about. On November the 22nd, 2025 at 11 a.m., look at the spike. Somebody was searching for her name, for Sarah Beckstein. Why would her name all of a sudden be searched? This was just 2 days after the name Lakanwal was put in the search. Here, now we have Sarah. This is prior to what happened to this soldier, this National Guard soldier. November 22nd, 2025 at 11 a.m. That's a little spike there. Something doesn't make sense.
Tell the truth.
This is the Information Man Show. I'm going to move this back and let him go further into this as he was doing. Check it out again.
Strange. Another very strange data point. 4 days prior, someone, probably multiple, most likely, in the state of Israel was searching for the name Sarah Beckstrom, the National Guard soldier who...
Why would Israel... Now, there's people who feel that Israel interferes in American affairs too much. There are people that don't like what has been happening over there in Gaza. Okay, we know that Jeffrey Epstein had connections to Israeli secret, their spy divisions. Why would there be a spike of her name? And James Lee, he has a good channel. Check it out, 5149. He does heavy research over there. Why would they be, not this one, I don't want to put that one up. This is the one I want up again. Why would there be heavy search coming from Israel for this young lady's name just a few days before she actually did lose her life? And once again, as I said before, we can't believe what our FBI, our alphabet boys are telling us. We can't believe even what the government tells us half the time or what the news puts out. Because particularly coming from the FBI and groups like them, they don't always tell us the truth.
Tell the truth.
Just like this. Remember this dude right here who tried to, well, what they told us was an assassination on Trump's life. And then we find out that they've totally scrubbed this guy right here from the internet. You can't even find any information about him We don't know what's happened to him. What's his trial date? There's no information. And then they told us that this guy was all over social media. Come to find out, he had no real social media presence. Something is weird here. I don't mean to be spooky, but I'm keeping it real with y'all. Let's continue.
Tragically lost her life during the November 26th attack in D.C. What is that all about? Well, it has since been uncovered that the alleged shooter, Rahmanullah Lakanwal, was, in fact, a former CIA contractor in Afghanistan.
Authorities confirming the alleged attacker, 29-year-old Rahmanullah Lakanwal, drove across the country from his home in Washington state to carry out the shooting. Confirming, too, that the married father of 5 was a member of an Afghan army unit in the city of Kandahar that worked.
So he was a member of an Afghan army unit, and that was one of the units that the United States used. And they let some of these guys come into the country. That was under the Biden administration. But this guy who did this deed, he got approved to stay in the country under the Donald Trump administration. They were involved in this blunder. It wasn't just the blunder of the Biden administration, but it was also a blunder of your sleepy white supremacist President Donald Trump.
Tell the truth.
They played a part. Yes, Biden was involved in letting this guy get over here in the first place. And Trump and his administration approved this guy when his paperwork was up for review. Go figure. You know, the United States government has had a history, everybody, of interacting, carrying on relationships with people that they would later say are tyrants. Let's continue.
Closely with the CIA, brought to the United States amid the U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021.
This individual is in this country for one reason and one reason alone, because of the disastrous withdrawal from the Biden administration and the failure to vet in any way, shape, or form, this individual and countless others.
Ooh, Kash Patel, seemingly always 3 steps behind.
He is 3 steps behind because it was the Trump administration that codified the guy. They're the ones that gave him final approval to stay in the country when he was up for review. They're the ones that also dropped the ball. It would be, in my opinion, both political parties, in this case, dropped the ball. Biden's administration dropped the ball with their screening of this individual. Plus, this individual did a whole bunch of crazy stuff in the name of the United States. So, you know, he had some psychological issues. And then the Trump administration that claims that they're tough on crime, even though he wants to pardon known drug dealing leaders. He wants to play tough guy and say, oh, how did this guy get in the country? Well, you just approved him to stay in the country. Prior to him, right after you approved him, this took place.
Clearly, now you can see he's playing politics instead of trying to actually figure out what the heck happened. Because officials say that, yes, Lakanwal came to the U.S. from Afghanistan in 2021 during the Biden administration and applied for asylum in 2024. Right. But according to 3 law enforcement sources, Lakanwal was granted asylum yet again in April of 2025, this time under President Donald Trump. So the big question is, was he really a quote unquote lone gunman, or could this have been something more? Something like maybe a domestic false flag operation
under Donald Trump. And this part right here that he's saying about a false flag operation, I want to know if y'all believe this.
So the big question is, was he really a quote unquote lone gunman, or could this have been something more? Something like maybe a domestic false flag operation or maybe even a U.S.-Israeli joint foreign operation. None of those things, by the way, I'm ready to conclude as of this moment. But I think the sheer fact that these theories are widely floating around on the internet, and they are, just go look, is, I think, a direct indictment of the massive level of distrust in our government and legacy institutions. Because think about this. If we were just to rewind maybe perhaps a couple of decades, Occam's razor, right? The idea that the simplest explanation for a phenomenon is usually the correct one for this situation would be, hey, this guy has seen some really horrible and violent things in his lifetime. As his childhood friend has told the media, right? He was, quote unquote, disturbed by the casualties his unit had caused in Afghanistan, and thus probably maybe struggling with a host of mental health issues. And for whatever reason, it bubbled up and manifested itself in this.
Now, that's very true. If you're doing a lot of this type of work, working in the military with the government, the United States government, you're taking people's lives, you're in war, it will have some psychological effects. I got to be honest, I don't agree with any of these political parties, both Republicans or Democrats, bringing people over from these foreign countries that have this background. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it at this time. But let's continue here.
Kind of violent decision that he decided to take against members of the U.S. National Guard. That explanation seems kind of reasonable. But in 2025, that explanation is no longer Occam's razor. Because earlier this month, The Blaze published a bombshell investigative report alleging that a Capitol police officer was possibly involved in the planting of pipe bombs on January 6th.
How many of y'all knew about this? That this is Blaze Media, a former Capitol Police officer. How many of y'all know about this? Let me know in the comment section of this video. Another thing he's going to bring up here is the FBI threw cold water on stories suggesting that Capitol Police officers was January 6th pipe bomber. They tried to throw cold water on this and say that it wasn't true, but it come to find out that this actually did happen. This woman did do this, and it just shows you how we're not getting the truth. We're not getting the truth.
Tell the truth.
The FBI, led by Kash Patel, has, of course, poo-pooed this claim, but Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky claims a whistleblower has alleged that an FBI cover-up could be at play here, and he directly called out Kash Patel in this recent tweet. Let's talk about Thomas Crooks, the young man who tried to assassinate Donald Trump last year.
This young man right here that I told you about was involved in trying to take out the racist president, Donald Trump. And for some reason, there's some strange reason that he's been scrubbed from the internet. And what they told you about him in terms of his presence on social media is not necessarily what we thought that it was. So it's another one of those peculiar situations. Let's get back into this a little bit more.
Claim that he was possibly recruited by a mysterious figure named Willie Tepes, who allegedly started pressuring cooks to commit violence. We also know of past cases of entrapment where our three-letter agencies would literally go and radicalize Muslims living in America to do violent acts against America. So at this point, I don't think we can simply just...
I want y'all to see this particular article. Check this out. The Herd Square bomber who was not. After 9/11, U.S. authorities used informants to secure hundreds of terrorist convictions, but did they help create plots where none existed? This is an article that you might want to check out. This whole situation is it's bananas, y'all. It's crazy. Let me know in the comment section of this video what you think about this whole situation. Trump has to hold some responsibility as well as Biden's administration. But but we're not getting the truth about a lot of things, y'all. We're getting a lot of lies, a lot of manipulation. That's why we have to dig deeper when we hear these stories in the news. We always have to think critically and understand, why did that happen? Anytime you have someone like this guy right here, Lakanwal, anytime you have someone like this who actually was working for the United States government as it relates to war, taking the lives of people, as it relates to CIA, and then they're led into the country by any administration, and then they go out and do something like this, and now the government, the news, everybody wants to point fingers, but nobody wants to really look at the fact that, hey, you originally hired this guy to be a war machine. Now that war machine has turned on those in the country. And in this case, unfortunately, the young lady lost her life. She was a National Guard. You saw the clip that I played. People are feeling really bad about what happened. The whole thing is crazy. And this is not going to be the last situation that's going to, I don't want these things to happen, but it just shows you that the world is getting much smaller. But it also shows you that the internet, the Google Trends, the powers that be, they can take information away that you research, that you find out, hey, something doesn't add up right. Then when you go back to it, it's gone. Because they don't really want people to know the truth. Let me put this clip up here, right here. What Donald Trump has done is considered illegal. The National Guard deployment, the judge ordered an end to Trump's troops deployment in D.C., calling it unlawful. This was on November the 20th, around the same time that you had this this situation right here, the spike that was starting to begin, looking for this guy, Lakanwal. Something doesn't make sense, and then it spiked up some more on the 26th, the day of. And of course, I showed you his video, James Lee's video, where he goes into more detail about this. This whole situation is crazy. Let me know what you think about this, okay? And give me the biggest favor. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification. Tell someone about the channel. Share the video. Thank you for watching and what have you. This is crazy. What can I say? Y'all take care. Peace.
Information is power.